She was the queen of the school, with designer clothes and a disdain for anyone who didn't meet her perfect standards. He was the quiet new kid, his clothes worn, his hands stained with dirt. She refused to sit next to him, turning up her nose at his perceived dirtiness. But she had no idea who he really was. You won't believe the shocking secret he carried, and the devastating lesson she learned about judging a book by its cover. In the elite, perfectly manicured world of Northwood Preparatory Academy, a prestigious private school nestled in the affluent suburbs of Greenwich, Connecticut, lived a young woman named Madison Thorne. At 16, she was the undisputed queen of the school, a whirlwind of designer clothes, perfectly coiffed hair, and an air of effortless superiority. Her father was a powerful hedge fund manager, her mother a renowned philanthropist, and their wealth was not just a fact, but a statement, a tangible manifestation of their elevated status. Madison moved through the polished hallways of Northwood with a regal grace, surrounded by her equally privileged entourage, a loyal band of admirers who hung on her every word. She was beautiful, intelligent, and utterly ruthless. She saw the world as a stage, and she was the undisputed star. Madison's world was meticulously curated. Her friends were from the right families, the legacy families, the old money. Her clothes were from the right boutiques, Saks Fifth Avenue, Bergdorf Goodman. Her opinions were always, without question, the right ones. She had a profound, almost pathological, disdain for anything that was less than perfect, less than pristine. She believed in order, in cleanliness, in a clear, unambiguous hierarchy of social status. And at the bottom of that hierarchy were the dirty people, the poor people, the unworthy people. She had been taught, implicitly and explicitly, that cleanliness was next to godliness, and that outward appearance was a direct reflection of a person's inner worth. She judged everyone by their clothes, their shoes, their hair, their every superficial detail. She was a connoisseur of perfection, and she saw imperfections as a personal affront. One crisp autumn morning, a new student arrived at Northwood Preparatory. His name was Liam Carter. He was, to Madison's discerning eye, everything she detested. He was quiet, almost invisible, a stark contrast to the boisterous, self-assured students who populated their privileged world. His clothes were clean, but undeniably worn, faded jeans, a worn-out hoodie, and far from the designer labels that adorned Madison and her friends. His hair, a mop of dark curls, fell across his forehead, untamed by expensive gels or stylists. And most strikingly, his hands, though small and slender, were stained with what looked like indelible marks of dirt, not a surface stain, but a deep-seated grime, ingrained deeply into his skin. He carried a battered, old backpack, a relic from a different world, a world far removed from the pristine, leather-bound bags that adorned the shoulders of Northwood students. The whispers started the moment he walked into the classroom. Who was he? Why was he here? Northwood Preparatory was known for its exclusivity, its exorbitant tuition fees. How could someone like him be admitted? The rumors swirled, a mix of speculation and disdain. Some said he was a scholarship student, a charity case. Others whispered that his family had come into sudden, undeserved wealth. Whatever the truth, he was an anomaly, an unwelcome intrusion into their perfectly ordered world. Madison, with her usual air of superiority, took one look at him and wrinkled her nose in disgust. His dirtiness was an affront to her sensibilities. His worn clothes were a stain on the pristine tableau of their classroom. His quietness was a sign of weakness. He was an other, a person who did not belong, a person who was clearly out of place. She felt a profound sense of revulsion, a visceral reaction to his perceived imperfection. Their first interaction was in biology class. The teacher, a kind, elderly woman named Ms. Davis, believed in collaborative learning. "Madison," she said, her voice gentle, "Liam, you two will be partners for the new project on cell structures." Madison's heart sank. She looked at Liam, who was sitting quietly at his desk, his eyes fixed on his textbook. He hadn't even looked up when their names were called. He was, she thought, a complete social pariah. Madison, with a dramatic sigh, picked up her chair and moved it to the very edge of the lab table, as far away from Liam as possible. She didn't say a word. Her message was clear: she would not sit next to him. She would not touch him. She would not even acknowledge his existence. Liam, without a word, simply nodded. He didn't protest. He didn't complain. He didn't even look at her. He simply opened his textbook and began to read, his quiet demeanor a stark contrast to Madison's ostentatious display of disdain. His silence, however, was not a sign of weakness, but a shield, a quiet defiance that only added to Madison's irritation. Throughout the project, Madison treated Liam with a profound, unyielding disdain. She would refuse to make eye contact, She would answer his questions with curt, monosyllabic replies, and she would constantly sanitize her hands after touching any equipment he had used. She would make snide remarks about his dirty hands, his worn clothes, his unrefined manners. Her friends, ever loyal to their queen, would join in, their laughter a sharp, ugly sound in the quiet classroom. Liam, with his usual quiet dignity, simply ignored them. He would do his work, his hands moving with a precise, almost surgical grace, and he would answer their taunts with a quiet, unyielding silence. His silence, however, was not a sign of defeat, but a quiet, powerful resistance. It was as if he inhabited a different world, a world where their cruelty held no power over him. One afternoon, after a particularly brutal session of Liam bashing, Madison noticed something peculiar. Liam was not getting on the school bus. Instead, he was walking toward the poorer section of town, a labyrinth of narrow, winding streets and dilapidated buildings that Madison had only ever seen from the tinted windows of her father's luxury sedan. She felt a prickle of curiosity, a rare emotion in her carefully controlled world. She decided to follow him. She told her driver to follow him discreetly, her curiosity overriding her usual disdain. She followed him through the winding, dusty streets, past the bustling markets and the overflowing sewers. She saw poverty she had only ever read about in books, a raw, undeniable reality that was a stark contrast to the manicured lawns of Northwood Preparatory. Liam, with his worn clothes and his quiet dignity, moved through this world with a familiar ease, a sense of belonging that was both unsettling and intriguing. He finally stopped in front of a small, unassuming building, a building that looked like a cross between a school and a community center. It was called the Lighthouse Community Center. A faded sign, hand-painted and peeling, hung above the door. He walked in, and Madison, her curiosity now a burning fire, followed him, her heart pounding in her chest. She walked into a large, bustling room, a room filled with children. Small children, even younger than her sister, sat at makeshift tables, their faces lit up with a quiet, unyielding joy. They were drawing, painting, reading, their hands, like Liam's, stained with the indelible marks of dirt. And in the center of the room, surrounded by a swarm of adoring children, was Liam. He was laughing, smiling, his face alight with a warmth and a joy Madison had never seen before. He was teaching them, guiding them, helping them with their homework. He was telling them stories, his voice a gentle, melodic hum, and the children were hanging on his every word. Madison stood in the doorway, a silent, unseen witness to a scene that was both beautiful and utterly heartbreaking. She watched him, and a profound, devastating realization slowly dawned on her. His dirtiness was not a sign of his poverty, but a sign of his compassion. His stained hands were not a mark of his low status, but a mark of his tireless dedication. His quietness was not a sign of weakness, but a sign of his profound, unwavering strength. He was not a charity case. He was a hero. She watched him for what felt like an eternity, her heart aching with a pain she had never known. She saw him help a small girl with her drawing, his stained hands gently guiding her tiny fingers. She saw him read a story to a group of eager children, his voice filled with a warmth and a tenderness that was utterly captivating. She saw him comfort a crying child, his arms a gentle, loving embrace. And in that moment, in the bustling, joyous chaos of the Lighthouse Community Center, Madison's meticulously curated world shattered. Her judgments, her disdain, her carefully constructed hierarchy of social status, all of it crumbled into dust. She realized that she had been utterly, profoundly wrong. She had judged him by his cover, and she had missed the entire story. She walked out of the Lighthouse Community Center, her mind a blur of shame and regret. She walked back through the winding, dusty streets, but this time, she saw them with different eyes. She saw not poverty, but resilience. She saw not despair, but hope. She saw not dirty people, but human beings, each with their own story, their own struggles, their own quiet dignity. She saw the world not in black and white, but in a kaleidoscope of colors, a complex, messy, beautiful tapestry of humanity. The next morning, Madison walked into biology class, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked at Liam, who was sitting quietly at his desk, his eyes fixed on his textbook. He hadn't even looked up when she walked in. He was, as always, in his own world. Madison walked to her lab table, and instead of moving her chair away from him, she pulled it closer. She sat down next to him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Liam," she said, her voice a small, hesitant whisper. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was a jerk. I hope you can forgive me." Liam looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. He looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw no judgment, no anger, no resentment. She saw only a quiet, profound kindness. He simply nodded, a small, gentle smile touching his lips. "It's all right, Madison," he said, his voice a soft, melodic hum. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from them." Madison's eyes welled up with tears. She had been forgiven. She had been given a second chance. She had been given a chance to be a better person. She spent the rest of the class talking to him, not about biology, but about the Lighthouse Community Center, about the children, about his work. She learned that the Lighthouse Community Center was a safe haven for at-risk youth, a place that provided them with food, shelter, education, and, most importantly, hope. She learned that Liam was not just a student at Northwood Preparatory, but a volunteer, a mentor, a brother to the children of the Lighthouse Community Center. She learned that his family had once lived in the same conditions as the children he was helping, and that his admission to Northwood was a scholarship, a golden ticket out of poverty, a testament to his brilliance and his unwavering determination. From that day on, Madison became a different person. She became a regular volunteer at the Lighthouse Community Center, her designer clothes replaced by simple, comfortable attire, her perfectly coiffed hair often disheveled from playing with the children. Her friends, once loyal to their queen, were confused by her transformation. Some drifted away, unable to reconcile her new self with the person they had once known. But others, inspired by her change, joined her, their eyes slowly opening to a world they had never known. Madison, once the queen of Northwood Preparatory, was now the queen of the Lighthouse Community Center. She organized fundraisers, she rallied her privileged friends, she used her social influence to bring attention and resources to the community center. She became a fierce advocate for the children, a passionate voice for the voiceless. She learned that true beauty was not in designer clothes or perfect hair, but in compassion, in kindness, in the profound, unyielding power of the human heart. She learned that true wealth was not in money, but in the love you gave, and the lives you touched. She learned that true perfection was not in outward appearance, but in the quiet, profound dignity of every human being, no matter their station in life. She learned that the greatest lessons in life were not found in textbooks, but in the stained hands of a dirty kid, and in the joyous laughter of forgotten children. This story is a powerful reminder that you never know who you are talking to. It's a reminder that judging a book by its cover can lead to profound regret, and that true worth is found not in wealth or status, but in kindness and compassion. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of empathy. Like and subscribe for more stories that will change your perspective and remind you that sometimes, the most valuable lessons are the ones that challenge our deepest assumptions.